Whiskers was an old cat with soft fur and wise yellow eyes. She lived in a small, peaceful town where the days were quiet and the nights were calm. Most of the time, Whiskers spent her days wandering the town, visiting her favorite spots: the garden behind a bakery, the warm sun by the window at the coffee shop, and the old tree at the edge of the forest. But today, something felt different. It was late afternoon, and the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light over the streets. Whiskers padded through the quiet alleyways, her paws making soft sounds on the cobblestone ground. As she walked, she heard something that caught her attention. It was a small, weak meow, barely a whisper in the cool air. Whiskers stopped in her tracks and turned her head, her ears twitching. The sound came from behind a tall stack of crates at the end of the alley. Curious, Whiskers slowly approached the source of the sound. Her heart began to race as she wondered who or what could be making the noise. As she peered around the corner of the crates, she saw something that made her stop in surprise. There, curled up in a small box, was a tiny kitten. The kitten was no bigger than a softball, with white fur that looked like snow. Its eyes were wide and round, a soft shade of green. It looked up at Whiskers, its tiny body trembling with fear. Whiskers' heart softened at the sight. She had seen many kittens in her time, but there was something about this one that made her feel an odd connection. Whiskers stepped closer, her paws silent on the ground. The kitten didn't move. It just stared at her with those big, innocent eyes. Whiskers' nose twitched. She could smell the scent of the kitten, new and unfamiliar. She had never seen this little one before, who had left it here, all alone. The alley was quiet, and no one seemed to be around. Whiskers glanced up and down the street, but there was no sign of anyone who might have been the kitten's owner. With a gentle purr, Whiskers nudged the box with her nose. The kitten gave a small mew and took a hesitant step forward. It was weak, hungry, and frightened, but there was something in its eyes that made Whiskers feel like it was meant to be here, with her. Whiskers sat down beside the box and watched the kitten carefully. She wasn't sure what to do next. She had never had a kitten of her own. She had lived a long, independent life, free to roam as she pleased. But something told her that this tiny creature needed her. She couldn't just leave it here, abandoned and alone. After a moment of thought, Whiskers carefully picked the kitten up by the scruff of its neck, just as a mother cat would do. The kitten mewed softly, but it didn't struggle. It seemed to trust Whiskers, even though they had just met. With the kitten gently cradled in her mouth, Whiskers made her way home. The evening air was cool, and the streets were starting to empty as people finished their work and returned to their houses. Whiskers walked quickly, her mind racing with questions. Why had the kitten been left in the alley? And why did she feel such a strong connection to it? When Whiskers arrived at her cozy little house, she set the kitten down on the soft rug in front of the fireplace. She gave the kitten a soft lick on the head, trying to comfort it. The kitten blinked, still nervous, but it began to relax in the warmth of the room. Whiskers watched it closely, wondering how she could help it. The kitten's fur was soft, but it was clear it hadn't eaten in a while. Whiskers padded over to her food dish and sniffed it. She had just enough for herself, but she knew she couldn't leave the kitten hungry. She gently nudged the food bowl toward the little one, who sniffed it curiously before taking a small bite. Whiskers smiled to herself, feeling a warmth in her heart as she watched the kitten eat. But there was something else on Whiskers' mind. She had always been independent, but this kitten was different. There was an odd feeling in the air, a sense of mystery that Whiskers couldn't explain. As the kitten ate, Whiskers looked out the window, her yellow eyes narrowing in thought. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary kitten. Something about it seemed special. The kitten finished its food and curled up in a corner of the room, its tiny body now more relaxed. Whiskers lay down beside it, her eyes still wide open, keeping watch. The room was peaceful, but inside, Whiskers' mind was filled with questions. Who had left the kitten in the alley? Why had it been abandoned? And why did it feel like there was more to this kitten than met the eye? Whiskers closed her eyes and began to doze, But she couldn't forget the strange feeling in her chest. As the night grew darker, she knew that the mystery of the kitten had only just begun. The days passed, and Whiskers and the kitten, now named Paws, began to grow closer. Every morning, as the sun's first rays peeked through the window, Whiskers would stretch, letting out a soft yawn. She would then look over to where Paws slept on the rug. The little kitten had grown stronger, and its fur was no longer so thin. It was still small, but it had a spark in its eyes that made Whiskers smile every time she saw it. Paws, though still cautious, had started to trust Whiskers completely. It would follow her around the house, hopping playfully at her heels or curling up beside her during naps. Whiskers, who had lived most of her life alone, found herself enjoying the company. The little kitten's presence warmed her heart, something she hadn't felt in years. But even though Paws was becoming more comfortable, there was still something strange about the kitten. Whiskers couldn't quite put her paw on it. At times, when Paws would look at her, those green eyes would seem older, wiser, almost as if it knew something Whiskers didn't. It wasn't like any kitten she had ever seen before. One sunny afternoon, as they played in the garden behind Whiskers' house, something unusual happened. Paws, who had been chasing a fluttering butterfly, suddenly stopped. Its little ears twitched, and its tail flicked nervously. Whiskers looked up from where she was lazily lounging in the sun. "What is it, little one?" Whiskers asked, her voice soft and gentle. Paws didn't respond. It was staring intently at the old oak tree that stood at the far end of the garden. Whiskers had never thought much of the tree. It was just another part of the landscape, like the stones in the path or the flowers that bloomed in spring. But today, something about the tree seemed different. Paws' gaze remained fixed on the tree, and Whiskers felt a chill run down her spine. She stood up and padded over to Paws, her paws making soft sounds on the grass. When she reached the little kitten, she crouched down beside it. "Are you okay?" she asked. The kitten didn't answer, but instead, it let out a soft meow, almost as if it were calling out to something. Whiskers felt a strange sensation, as if the air around them had thickened. It wasn't the usual peaceful feeling she got when sitting outside. This felt different, almost magical. Suddenly, without warning, Paws darted toward the tree. Whiskers watched in surprise as the kitten climbed up the rough bark, with an agility that didn't seem possible for such a small creature. Whiskers had never seen a kitten move like that before. "Paws, wait," Whiskers called out, but the kitten didn't stop. Before Whiskers could follow, Paws reached the lowest branch of the tree and paused. It sat there for a moment, staring into the branches above. Whiskers walked over to the tree and looked up. She could see Paws' little body silhouetted against the bright sky. The kitten's eyes glowed in the sunlight, making it look almost like a tiny star in the tree. Then, as quickly as it had climbed, Paws jumped down, landing softly on the ground beside Whiskers. It didn't seem hurt or startled, but there was something in its eyes now. It was as if it had seen something up there, something that Whiskers couldn't see. Paws brushed up against Whiskers' legs, as if trying to tell her that everything was fine. But Whiskers couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. The kitten, in a strange way, had changed. There was a new energy around it, something that felt ancient. Later that evening, as they sat by the fire, Whiskers watched Paws closely. The little kitten was now curling up on her favorite cushion, looking content. Yet every now and then, its eyes would wander to the window, staring at the darkening sky. Whiskers couldn't help but notice how distant the kitten seemed at times. It was as if Paws wasn't really there with her, but somewhere else entirely. Whiskers' heart ached a little. She knew there was something mysterious about this kitten, something she couldn't understand. But she also knew that, no matter what, she couldn't leave Paws alone again. The bond they had formed was too strong. Whiskers would protect this little one with everything she had. As the moonlight streamed in through the window, Whiskers rested her head on her paws. The fire crackled softly beside her, but her mind was far from the warmth of the flames. She couldn't stop thinking about the oak tree and Paw's strange behavior. Was there something more to the kitten? Was it connected to the tree? And if so, what did that mean for Whiskers? As she drifted off to sleep, she heard a soft meow in the distance. It wasn't Paw's. It was a deep, haunting sound that echoed through the night, sending shivers down Whiskers' spine. The days grew shorter as the leaves of the trees turned orange and gold. Whiskers and Paws had settled into a peaceful routine, but the strange events that had been building up around the kitten were starting to worry Whiskers. Every time she looked at Paws, she saw a flicker of something. An ancient knowledge in those green eyes, something that didn't belong to a kitten that had been abandoned just days ago. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Whiskers noticed something unusual. Paws, who had been napping on the rug near the fireplace, suddenly woke with a start. The kitten's fur was bristling, and its eyes were wide, staring at the door. "What's wrong, little one?" Whiskers asked softly, though she already had a sinking feeling in her heart. Paw's behavior had grown more erratic over the past few days. It would often stare into the shadows or paw at the air, as if trying to reach something that wasn't there. Without answering, Paws sprang to its feet and dashed out of the room. Whiskers quickly followed, her paws clicking softly on the wooden floors. The kitten bolted through the hall and out the back door, running straight toward the garden, as though it were being pulled by some invisible force. "Paws!" Whiskers called out, but the kitten didn't slow down. It reached the old oak tree in the corner of the yard and stopped in front of it. Whiskers arrived just behind, panting. She was about to call out again when something made her pause. Paws wasn't playing or exploring like a normal kitten would. It was staring intently at the base of the oak tree, where the roots twisted deep into the ground. Whiskers felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Something wasn't right. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves, but there was no sound coming from the tree itself. Whiskers took a cautious step closer, and just as she did, she noticed something odd. A faint, glowing light coming from the ground near the tree's roots. It wasn't the light of the moon or the stars. This light was warm and golden, like a flicker of fire, but it was soft, almost like it belonged to the shadows themselves. "Paws, where are you going?" Whiskers whispered, but the kitten didn't respond. Paws walked closer to the glow, its tail twitching nervously. Whiskers' heart raced. She couldn't help but feel that the kitten was being drawn into something unknown. The glowing light flickered once more, and suddenly, the earth beneath the tree's roots seemed to shift. Whiskers watched in disbelief as a section of the ground near the roots began to rise, like a hidden door was opening. It was as though the tree itself was alive and shifting, revealing a secret Whiskers had never known existed. Paws walked right up to the opening, its little paws brushing against the dirt. The kitten didn't hesitate. It stepped into the hole, disappearing from Whiskers' sight. "No," Whiskers cried out, but something deep inside her told her that Paws was meant to go there, that it was part of something bigger than they both understood. With her heart pounding in her chest, Whiskers moved closer to the opening. The glow had faded, but there was still a faint warmth in the air. She glanced back at the house, but she knew there was no turning back now. Something powerful was happening, and she had to follow. Cautiously, Whiskers stepped forward. The ground beneath her paws felt strange, soft but solid, as though she were walking on something ancient, something forgotten by time. She looked down at the path that had appeared in front of her, narrow, winding, and dark. She could see the faint glow of Paw's green eyes up ahead, beckoning her to come closer. With a deep breath, Whiskers entered the passage, her tail flicking nervously behind her. The air grew colder, and the walls of the passage seemed to close in around her, but she kept moving, following the little kitten. She had to know what was happening. The passage seemed to stretch on for miles, though in reality, it couldn't have been more than a few yards. It twisted and turned like a maze, and the further Whiskers went, the more the air seemed to hum with energy, as though the very ground beneath her paws was alive with something ancient and powerful. Finally, the passage opened into a large underground chamber. The walls of the chamber were made of rough stone, covered in vines and moss, and the floor was uneven and cracked. The faint golden glow filled the space, coming from the center of the room, where Paws stood, staring up at something Whiskers couldn't see. Whiskers hesitated at the entrance, her eyes darting around the chamber. It was silent, too silent. There was something about this place that felt both welcoming and threatening. And Paws was standing perfectly still, almost as if it were waiting for something or someone. As Whiskers stepped further into the room, the air seemed to grow thicker, and the glow grew brighter. And that's when she saw it. A large, circular symbol carved into the stone floor, glowing with the same warm, golden light. The symbol was intricate, with lines and shapes Whiskers couldn't recognize, but it felt familiar, like something from a distant dream. Paws slowly turned its head, meeting Whiskers' gaze. The kitten's eyes held a depth that made Whiskers' heart skip a beat. It was as if the kitten knew something she didn't, as if it had come to this place for a reason. "What is this place, Paws?" Whiskers whispered, her voice trembling. "What are we doing here?" The kitten mewed softly, and then, as if responding to a silent command, it stepped into the center of the glowing symbol. Whiskers watched in awe as the light around Paws intensified, and for a moment, the entire chamber seemed to come alive, as if the walls were breathing with the energy of the room. The chamber was bathed in a warm, golden light, and Whiskers could feel the strange energy in the air, making her fur stand on end. She stood at the edge of the glowing symbol, her heart racing in her chest. Paws had stepped into the center of the circle, and the kitten's green eyes glowed with an intensity Whiskers had never seen before. It was as if the kitten was becoming something more, something ancient, something beyond the little creature Whiskers had first found in the alley. As Whiskers watched, the air seemed to hum around them, vibrating with a low, almost inaudible sound. The walls of the chamber seemed to shift, the vines and moss creeping further along the stone, as if the room itself were alive, responding to the energy in the center. Whiskers felt her paws tingle as she stepped forward, her instincts telling her that she was about to witness something incredible, something that would change everything. The golden light around Paws intensified, casting long, strange shadows across the walls. Paws didn't move, but its eyes never left Whiskers. There was a connection between them, an unspoken understanding that sent a wave of warmth through Whiskers' chest. She had known from the moment she found Paws that the kitten was special, but now, standing in the heart of this mysterious place, she began to understand just how special it truly was. The symbol on the floor seemed to pulse with life, its intricate lines glowing brighter with each passing second. Whiskers felt a wave of heat wash over her, and for a moment she closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the power of the place. It was as if the earth itself was waking up, stirring with ancient energy that had been buried for centuries. Suddenly, Paws meowed, a soft, melodic sound that filled the chamber and echoed off the stone walls. Whiskers' eyes snapped open, and she saw the kitten's form begin to shimmer. The edges of its fur seemed to blur, and for a split second, Whiskers thought she saw something else, a shadow of another creature, something much larger and older than a mere kitten. The ground beneath them rumbled softly, and Whiskers took a cautious step back. Was the earth moving, or was it the power of the symbol beneath their paws? She couldn't tell, but the sensation of something awakening, something long dormant, was unmistakable. Then, with a sudden flash of light, the symbol on the floor erupted in a brilliant glow, and a wave of energy surged through the room. Whiskers felt the force of it in her bones, a rush of warmth that made her heart race. She wanted to run, to flee from the intensity of it, but she couldn't move. Her eyes were fixed on Paws, who stood at the center, glowing brighter than ever. The kitten's form shifted again, and in that moment, Whiskers saw it. Paws wasn't just a kitten. It was something more. It was the embodiment of something ancient, something that had been hidden for centuries. The kitten was the key, the connection between the present and the forgotten past. Whiskers didn't understand how she knew this, but the truth was clear. Paws had come into her life for a reason, and the bond they shared was no accident. Paws was here to unlock something something that had been sealed away beneath the earth for too long. As the light faded, Paws stepped out of the symbol, its eyes now glowing a bright, vibrant green. The kitten looked up at Whiskers, and for the first time, there was a look of complete understanding in those eyes. You're not just a kitten, are you? Whiskers whispered, her voice shaking. The kitten gave a small meow, as if confirming her words. Whiskers could feel the truth in her heart. The kitten wasn't just an ordinary creature. It was a guardian, a protector of some ancient power that had been hidden for generations. The room began to settle, the hum of energy fading into a quiet stillness. Whiskers took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The mystery of Paws had only just begun to reveal itself, but there was still so much more to uncover. The question that burned in her mind was now clear. What was this ancient power, and why had Paws come to her? Paws walked over to Whiskers, nuzzling her leg gently. The kitten's touch was warm and comforting, a reminder that, despite the chaos and mystery surrounding them, they were together in this. Whiskers bent down to stroke Paws' fur, her heart swelling with both fear and awe. Whatever was happening, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let Paws face it alone. Whatever is happening, Whiskers murmured, we'll face it together. Paws meowed again, its voice soft but certain, as if agreeing with her. Whiskers couldn't help but smile. The kitten may have been the key to something much bigger, but it was also her companion, and together, they would figure it out. Just as Whiskers turned to leave the chamber, the ground trembled again, a low vibration that sent a jolt of fear through her. She stopped, her ears twitching. Something was happening, something that couldn't be ignored. Looking down at Paws, Whiskers could see the same determination in the kitten's eyes. They weren't just going to uncover a secret, they were going to face whatever lay ahead, no matter how dangerous or mysterious. The future was uncertain, but Whiskers knew one thing. With Paws by her side, she wasn't afraid. The air felt charged with energy as Whiskers and Paws slowly made their way out of the underground chamber. The golden glow had faded, but the lingering warmth of it seemed to follow them, wrapping around them like an invisible shield. Whiskers could still feel the trembling in the ground beneath her paws, a reminder that something powerful was stirring beneath the earth. As they emerged into the garden, the first rays of dawn were breaking through the trees, casting soft shadows on the ground. The world around them seemed quiet, peaceful, but Whiskers couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The mystery of the ancient power was no longer just a distant puzzle. It was something real, something that could affect everything in her world. Paws trotted ahead, its little paws making barely a sound on the grass. The kitten's tail flicked back and forth, its green eyes gleaming with a quiet intelligence that Whiskers had never seen before. There was no longer any trace of the timid, abandoned kitten she had found in the alley. This was a creature of purpose, one with knowledge that Whiskers could only begin to comprehend. "Where are you going, little one?" Whiskers asked softly, her voice a mix of concern and curiosity. But Paws didn't answer. It just continued moving, as if it knew exactly where it was headed. Whiskers followed, her heart beating faster with each step. They crossed the garden and headed toward the back of the house, where the old oak tree stood, its gnarled branches reaching toward the sky. The tree had always been a quiet, unremarkable part of the yard, but now it felt different. It felt like the heart of something much bigger, something ancient and full of power. Paws stopped in front of the tree, its eyes fixed on the twisted trunk. Whiskers joined the kitten, looking up at the old oak. She couldn't explain it, but she could feel it. There was something about this tree, something hidden deep within its roots. It was as though it was waiting for something, or someone, to unlock its secret. Suddenly, Paws turned to face Whiskers, its green eyes shimmering with intensity. The kitten let out a soft meow, and then padded toward the base of the tree. Whiskers hesitated for a moment before following. As Paws approached the roots, a faint glow began to pulse from the ground. Whiskers' breath caught in her throat. She recognized the glow. It was the same golden light they had seen in the underground chamber. But now, It seemed to be coming from deep within the earth, as though the tree itself was alive and breathing. Paws stopped in front of the glow, looking up at Whiskers as if waiting for her to understand. Whiskers' heart pounded in her chest. She knew this was it. This was the moment when everything would change. She couldn't ignore the pull of the energy any longer. It was time to uncover the tree's secret. Paws. What is this? Whiskers whispered, her voice trembling. The kitten didn't answer. Instead, it walked around the base of the tree, stopping at a small crack in the roots. The crack was narrow, barely visible, but Whiskers could see the faint glow coming from within. Her paws tingled as she stepped closer, feeling the warmth radiating from the crack. Without a second thought, Whiskers reached out and gently pushed aside a few loose branches, revealing the crack in the roots. As soon as her paw made contact with the earth, the ground trembled again, this time more violently. Whiskers gasped, stepping back, but the crack in the roots began to widen, as if responding to her touch. A low, deep rumble echoed through the ground, and for a moment, Whiskers felt as though the entire world had gone still. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, the ground beneath the oak tree cracked open, revealing the hidden chamber below. Whiskers stood frozen, her heart racing. What was this? What had she just uncovered? Paws meowed again, its voice soft but urgent, and Whiskers knew what she had to do. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, peering down into the dark, glowing opening beneath the tree. The air smelled damp, earthy, and ancient, as if the chamber had been sealed away for centuries. "Are you ready, Paws?" Whiskers asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. She didn't know what they would find in this hidden chamber, but one thing was certain. Whatever it was connected to Paws, and it was a part of the mystery they had been unraveling together. The kitten didn't respond, but its eyes shone brightly, and it took a step forward, as if beckoning Whiskers to follow. With a final look at the quiet house behind her, Whiskers took the first step down into the hidden chamber, the soft glow of Paws' eyes guiding her way. The air in the chamber was thick with ancient energy. As Whiskers descended into the dark, glowing space beneath the oak tree, she felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her. The narrow passage was cool and damp, but the glow from Paws' eyes illuminated the way ahead, casting long shadows against the stone walls. Paws moved ahead, its tiny paws light against the stone, as if it had been here before. Whiskers couldn't help but feel that the kitten knew this place intimately, perhaps better than she did. It didn't hesitate, moving confidently toward the center of the chamber, where the golden light seemed to gather like a heartbeat. As Whiskers followed, the walls of the chamber grew wider, and the glow intensified. The light was now so bright that it illuminated every corner, casting strange shapes across the walls. Whiskers tried to make sense of what she was seeing, but the images on the walls were too strange, too cryptic. Symbols she didn't recognize were carved into the stone, intertwining in patterns that made her head spin. At the center of the chamber, Paws stopped. The kitten's fur shimmered in the golden light as it gazed up at a pedestal that stood in the center of the room. The pedestal was made of ancient stone, its surface worn and cracked with age. Atop it sat a small, glowing object, a crystal pulsing with energy, radiating a soft, golden warmth. Whiskers felt a pull toward the crystal. It was as if the object itself was calling to her, its power vibrating through the air. She stepped forward, her paw outstretched, but as she moved closer, the chamber seemed to react. The walls hummed, and the ground beneath her trembled slightly. "What is this?" Whiskers whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she gazed at the crystal. She had never seen anything like it before, but somehow she knew it was important to Paws, and to whatever had been hidden beneath the earth for so long. Paws meowed again, a soft, urgent sound, its eyes glowing brighter. Whiskers took another step closer, drawn to the crystal with an intensity she couldn't explain. But as her paw brushed against the pedestal, the golden light around the crystal flared to life, almost blinding in its brightness. Suddenly, a voice filled the chamber, deep and resonant. echoing from every wall. Whiskers froze, her fur standing on end. It wasn't a voice she could understand, but somehow it felt familiar. It was as though the words were meant for her, meant to explain something she had always known deep down. The voice seemed to grow louder, the sound vibrating through the stone beneath her paws. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the voice fell silent, leaving Whiskers and Paws alone in the chamber, surrounded by the soft glow of the crystal. What just happened? Whiskers breathed, still in shock from the mysterious voice. The energy in the room was overwhelming, filling her with both awe and fear. She looked down at Paws, whose green eyes were wide, and for the first time, she could sense that the kitten was no longer just a guide. It was a part of this place, a key to unlocking the ancient power hidden within. Paws meowed again, but this time it was different. The sound was not just a call, it was a command, an invitation. Whiskers felt a wave of understanding wash over her. The kitten wasn't just leading her to this chamber, it was asking her to take the next step, to open the door to the past. With a deep breath, Whiskers stepped forward, her paw hovering just above the crystal. She hesitated for only a moment before she made contact. The moment her paw touched the glowing surface of the crystal, the entire chamber seemed to shake with energy. The walls cracked and groaned, as if they had been waiting for this moment for eons. The light from the crystal exploded outward, filling the room with a blinding brilliance. Whiskers squinted against the intensity, but she couldn't look away. It was as if the light was pulling her in, drawing her into the heart of the mystery. Then, in a flash, everything stopped. The light faded, and the room went silent. Whiskers blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim glow once more. She looked around, but everything had changed. The chamber was no longer the same. It was as if the walls had shifted, revealing something new. A deep, resonant voice echoed in her mind, this time in words she could understand. You have awakened the heart of the power. The time has come to unlock the truth. Whiskers' heart skipped a beat. The voice wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was coming from inside her mind, from deep within. The power that had been hidden beneath the earth for centuries had chosen her, and now the truth was within her reach. Paws was sitting calmly beside her, its eyes gleaming with pride. The kitten seemed to know something that Whiskers didn't yet understand, but there was no mistaking the connection between them. They were both a part of this ancient story, this mystery that had been waiting to be uncovered. With a steadying breath, Whiskers turned toward the glowing crystal, now pulsing with a softer, more steady light. She knew that the next step would reveal everything. The truth behind Paws, the ancient power, and the secret that had been hidden for so long. But what would it cost her? What would she have to give up to unlock the truth? With a final glance at Paws, Whiskers knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The crystal pulsed softly in the center of the chamber, its light now steady and calming. Whiskers felt a quiet stillness settle over her, as though the very air had paused, waiting for her next move. She glanced down at Paws, who stood beside her, its eyes glowing with a gentle, knowing intensity. The time had come. The ancient power, the secrets buried beneath the earth for centuries, had chosen her. And now, the truth would be revealed. Whiskers took a deep breath, steadying herself as she stepped closer to the crystal. Her paw hovered just above it, feeling the warmth that radiated from its surface. The soft hum of energy was almost comforting now, no longer overwhelming. It was as if the crystal was welcoming her, inviting her to unlock the final piece of the puzzle. I'm ready, Whiskers whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew that with Paws by her side, she wasn't alone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. With a slow, deliberate movement, Whiskers placed her paw on the glowing crystal. The moment she made contact, the light flared brightly once more, and a powerful surge of energy coursed through her, filling her with a strange mix of warmth and strength. For a moment, everything around her blurred. The walls of the chamber faded, the ground beneath her paws seemed to dissolve, and she felt herself being pulled into the light. The world spun, and then, in the blink of an eye, everything stopped. Whiskers stood in a vast, open space, an endless void, bathed in soft golden light. The ground beneath her paws was smooth and cold, like polished stone. There were no walls, no sky, just an infinite emptiness stretching out before her. She turned around, and there, in the distance, stood Paws. But this was not the Paws Whiskers had known. The kitten had transformed, its small form now larger, more powerful, its fur shimmering with a radiant light. Its green eyes, once soft and innocent, now glowed with an ancient wisdom, a depth that seemed to stretch across time itself. Whiskers' heart skipped a beat. What was this place? What had happened to Paws? The kitten's voice echoed in her mind, calm and clear. "This is the heart of the power," Paws said, its voice not spoken aloud but felt, deep within Whiskers' soul. "This is where the past, present, and future converge. You have unlocked the truth, Whiskers. You are the one chosen to restore balance." Whiskers took a step forward, her heart racing. "Balance? What do you mean? What's happening?" "The ancient power you have awakened is not just energy. It is the source of all life, the force that keeps the world in harmony. It was sealed away long ago to protect it from those who would use it for destruction. But now, the world is changing. The power must be restored to its rightful place. And you, Whiskers, are the key." Whiskers felt a wave of understanding wash over her, but it was mixed with confusion. She had always thought of herself as just a cat, someone who liked to explore and find stray kittens. How could she be the one to restore balance? How could she possibly hold the fate of the world in her paws? Paws seemed to sense her doubts and spoke again, its voice soothing. "You are more than you think, Whiskers. You were chosen for your kindness, your bravery, and your heart. You have shown the world what it means to care for others, to protect the weak. It is these qualities that make you worthy of this power." Whiskers' thoughts raced. All of this seemed impossible. How could she, just a cat, carry the weight of such an enormous responsibility? But as she looked into Paws' glowing eyes, she saw nothing but trust, nothing but belief in her. The kitten continued, "You and I are bound by fate, Whiskers. The power that lies within me is a part of you. We share a connection, and together, we can restore balance to the world." Whiskers nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling over her. She didn't understand everything, but she knew one thing for sure. This was her path. This was her purpose. The golden light around them grew brighter, and the void seemed to shimmer, swirling with energy. Whiskers felt the power surge through her, filling her with a sense of strength and clarity she had never known. The knowledge of the ancient power flowed into her, unlocking her potential, awakening something deep within. "It's time," Paws said softly. In that moment, the world around Whiskers began to shift. The golden light surrounded her, and she felt herself being pulled back to the chamber beneath the oak tree. She blinked, and in an instant she was back, standing beside the pedestal where the crystal had once glowed so brightly. But everything had changed. The chamber was no longer dark and mysterious. It was filled with light, vibrant and alive. The energy that had once felt heavy now felt balanced, calm. The power had been restored, and Whiskers knew that it was no longer hidden. It was part of the world, part of her. Paws, once again a small kitten, stood beside her, its green eyes filled with pride and gratitude. Whiskers took a deep breath, the weight of what had just happened still sinking in. She looked down at Paws, who meowed softly, as if saying goodbye. "This is your new path, Whiskers. You have unlocked the power. Now it is up to you to protect it." With that, Paws turned and walked toward the edge of the chamber, its figure slowly fading into the light. Whiskers watched as the kitten disappeared, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't just a cat anymore. She was the guardian of an ancient power, the protector of balance in the world. And with that knowledge, Whiskers knew that no matter what the future held, she would face it with courage and love, alongside the memory of Paws, her faithful companion.